gives me really like amazing pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Peter, who's a friend and one of the best speakers I know, by the way, about the sharing economy worldwide. Not just saying that, you'll probably see that in a minute. From the Sharing Cities Alliance, together with Harman. And yeah, go ahead, man. It's really interesting to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, likewise, and thank you for the introduction. No pressure at all. That's good. Yeah, I feel like we're already like quite some time into the event, and really happy with it, but a little bit sad that I see most of you only as a number in the participant list, which is of course the only way these days. So I don't really know the energy level in the room right now, but let's go through the next hour, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I feel that many of the examples we've heard today, to me, they really give me a sense of play. Like all these examples, they're just looking like what is there and what can we do with it, whether it's within insects or concrete or something else. And what I was supposed to speak about today is a project we did called CollaborativeXCircular, where at the urban level, we've also been exploring in different cities in Europe, how you can start playing with what's already there in the city. And this project was mostly had as its goal to inform policy. So I will not go to the entire project, but invite you to go to the website CollaborativeXCircular.com. And actually the only thing that I want to say out loud here based on this project is that it shows that, you know, the rules of the game are slowly changing one step at a time. We just heard from Navid as well that in the Dutch government things are changing. Well, a project like this, a European project, is sort of a stepping stone that will in the end lead to more regulatory frameworks that favor circular and sharing models. So just pick it up as a signal if you're in business that the rules of the games are changing. They are changing more rapidly since COVID, and also in the field of sharing and circular, this is the case. So what I was thinking about before this talk is that I was playing with my cousin, just 4 years old, last week, and he was trying to build a tower using these Duplo blocks, sort of Lego blocks. And the thing is that when the tower was almost finished, it had like 4 bottom parts, and one of those parts was missing, so the tower would keep on collapsing all the time. So I'm sitting there being the smart adult in the room, like, okay, we need to find another block to fix this tower so it doesn't fall. But then I was thinking, okay, you know, we just heard also from Navid the wisdom of a child. What would they do? And what my cousin did actually was just removing 3 other parts of the tower, and then also it stood there. So my cousin was not starting to look like, okay, we need to extract more resources from somewhere. We just remove a little bit and it works. And that is really playing with what is already there. And I think this is the essence of both the circular economy and the sharing economy. So really the question is for you as well, to solve your problems or grasp new opportunities, do you need to add something new or maybe play with what's already there? And in the Sharing Cities Alliance, we come across a lot of the first type of thinking, that you want to add something. Like mobility is, of course, a very obvious one. Also in cities like Tel Aviv, we know that. And you get the situation that in countries like the US, for every car that's there are 8 parking spots built. So they literally turn half the country into a parking spot just to solve the problem of not having enough parking spots. And of course, now that we see during the pandemic that space in cities is a problem in general, finally, we face a limitation, and then we get creative because there's a real need, and then the solutions pop up. And I think this is the case for most of the examples we've heard today, even the people's life stories we've heard today, is that they face some hurdle or some challenge, and then they started changing. But again, playing with what is already there is how the earth works. I think this is very much in Thomas Rau's talk, and it's the essence of sharing, and it's the essence of circularity. And if you're in business, this can be very good business. I think in the sharing economy, we've seen that facilitating access has been at the heart of it. I think Peerby, the example from just before, is a very good example, but also the circular ones. And I think what is very typical for the sharing economy is the element of having the platform. And what the platform is doing, it's bringing together a supply and a demand. But by now, Peerby can know when and where people tend to want things. So this element that these platforms, I think it's also the data that Thomas Rau spoke about, shows where demand is going to be. And that can be a nice place where circular companies or circular business models can start because they know that the demand is there. So we are now like 10 to 12 years into the digital sharing economy, and we've seen basically it evolving along two lines. One is the peer-to-peer sharing economy, where people directly rent and borrow from each other. And this is mostly coming about in the long tail of the economy. So these are things that you need occasionally and not on an everyday basis. So those are very suitable for peer-to-peer solutions. And then you see where we thought before that this would also become maybe peer-to-peer, but in the short tail of the economy, like you eat every day, you travel maybe every day, there you see more business-to-consumer models pop up, because these platforms, they've seen a lot of demand. For example, in ride-sharing in Europe, like BlaBlaCar, on the route between Brussels and Paris, there's so much traffic that BlaBlaCar, the company, now has its own buses driving on that route. So they bring their own supply there. And again, that's a sweet spot for circular designed products to be used there, because you would then want to intensify and extend the use phase of a product. This is something I didn't hear before yet today, is that the sharing economy is definitely part of the circular economy, but it's often referred to as the most inner loop of it, because in the use phase of a product, it has its highest value. So I have a Fairphone with different parts, but the parts themselves are interesting and also circular and reusable, by the way, but the phone itself has the highest value. So the longer I can keep the phone as a whole in the loop, the more business can be generated. A second big phenomenon that could also be a bridge builder between circular and sharing is indeed the financing and ownership question. And this is sort of a new wave that's coming up, where before we're thinking, okay, if it's all about access over ownership, then who's actually owning those assets that we're sharing? And that's why I really like Debbie's approach also on looking at the entire supply chain, that you think a little bit out of the box, like how can we best organize this? And would you want to live a life where everything you use is owned by an entity far away? Or would you want to have some sort of partial ownership of the things that you use regularly? So there you talk about collaborative financing models, community financing, community ownership, where groups of people own a set of assets and share them. So in area development and real estate development, you already see these things coming off the ground. But it's also how a car sharing platform like MyWheel started long ago. 5 families owning an extra car together. So the sharing and circular economy can be very good business. Playing with what's already there can be a very good business. Just some more practical things. I think BMW was mentioned before. When they started their car sharing scheme, the CEO famously said, we're no longer going to sell 1,000 cars one time, we're going to sell one car 1,000 times. You can, as a company, start looking at simply better utilizing the assets you already have, whether it's separate spaces, whether it's vehicles you may have, or also skills of people in your organization. But also a different way of financing innovation, financing new circular models, financing new businesses and new challenges. You can also play with what's already there, because you will have clients, and those clients may be able to also finance your company or product. Reward-based crowdfunding, for example, is interesting there. So for example, I got an electric, the Speed Pedelec, very fast electric bike. And I basically participated in a crowdfunding campaign before the product was made. I trusted the company because it was their second product. I basically paid a price that would be more or less cost price of production. And once enough people did this, the company could get off the ground and start with this new product. And I think with those circular model where you pay for access instead of a one-off buying a product, these campaigns can be extra interesting because of the payback, the long payback period that you can then also install. So essentially, I think you move from being a one-off seller to be a partner of a community, whether it's a community of corporate clients or a community of individual clients. And a last thing there that popped to mind today as well is that we learned in collaboration with the insurance companies that the insurance industry can actually be a great partner for circular business models, because they also have sort of a subscription-based model where they want to provide their clients certainty that you have a car that works, for example. So there can be great new collaborations made there that can be beneficial both for the insurance company, that can reduce cost in terms of claims, and to have a more sustainable world, which is also good for them in the long run. And in the Netherlands, you see some things popping up in agriculture here, partnerships being explored for farming equipment, for example. So I think that was a nice add-on there. So I would actually want to try to challenge you to see, like, if my observation with my cousin is also true in your life. You know, once you see a kid playing, what is the kid doing? Is this the way we should think naturally, or was this a coincidence? And I would also invite you to look at your calendar up towards your holiday and cancel something, because that, you know, it's about doing a little bit less, and then cancel something and think about this event, and then try to be brave. And if you are convinced, you know, that you know, playing with what's already there is all that we have to do, then start playing with what's already there. Just take some time, start writing it down, your private life, in your business, and then ideas will pop up. And if you have those ideas where you feel like, okay, here maybe I can remove something and make it smarter, do share it with us. It would be very interesting to know. And I think I'm going to wrap it here, because there's also very interesting the next session coming up. But if you have any questions, please ask. And yeah, there's so much to share about this topic that, you know, I'm always willing to continue talking about it. But in the end, it is the action that matters, and as long as you don't start with the action, you will not really learn the most important things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pieter. Can you maybe say a few words about the research, about what you did with the European Union? Because again, at the time, I thought it was really interesting. Again, it's the first time I actually see a research that kind of combines sharing and circular. I didn't really know or understand if you contrasted these two models, or what exactly did you guys do there?
Yeah, so we did explore in 6 different cities and regions in Europe how they could, you know, better utilize and explore, like, what you can do if you start combining sharing and circular. And the thing is that, just like all of you that are listening in now, and all the examples we heard, that every journey is different. And this is because the world is so diverse. So we have these shared visions, and we know, you know, underlying everything, there are basic principles that we've talked about today, but how it plays out in every city is quite different. That's why I say that you really should go on your own journey. But of course, there is some inspiration to be found when you start looking into different areas. Yeah, it really depends on your interest. So we had Prato in Italy, for example, which is a textile industry city that have a lot of old spaces that are no longer used, but also have the element of equipment, of waste streams. You know, a lot of water is used in textile, and they're trying to play with that. But for instance, in The Hague, the city government is very much focusing on inclusivity. So, okay, we do another project in a neighborhood where people invest in solar panels together, or where, like, a local sharing spot is created. But if we only reach the hipsters and you know, the high educated, high income people with it, then it doesn't really work. So how can you do it in an inclusive way? And then, to be very honest, in such a project, you see that sharing them between those cities, there can be quite different approaches. But I think in the most, like, you know, when it's success, when there is this element of sharing, so people need access for something, and people using as much as possible local things that are already there to provide what is then needed. Whether it's, you know, solar energy, using the sun that's shining on the roof of a local school, or whether it's food poverty and having a community garden that tries to use like the waste streams. Yeah, really, these are the sort of on the ground examples that are happening. And I'm to be honest, not 100% sure, because if you really start approaching it from a technical circular sharing approach, you may miss what is actually the need on the ground by the people. So I'm more and more convinced that in all those bigger projects, that's where we need to start.
Great, very, very interesting.